One of the great things about psychoanalysis is that it has a very different approach to mental health and mental illness than other disciplines such as psychology or medicine or biology. Psychoanalysis is a weird blend of many different sorts of disciplines. It is a weird blend of medicine, because after all, it came from a medical background. It's also a blend of physics, biology, philosophy, psychology, sociology, anthropology. It's a weird blend of hard science and social science. But one of the things that I really, really appreciate and value greatly about psychoanalysis is the way that it looks at what human mental health and illness is. Is that really a thing? How? How can we explain? How can we observe it? How can we really approach this very complicated topic that has been an issue forever, since the beginning of humankind? And there are many different ways in which psychoanalysis approaches this. Psychoanalysis is very different to psychology or psychiatry, which is a medical science, in that, well, in many regards, but in this particular regard, the parameters or criteria of mental health and mental illness. Of course, this doesn't mean that psychoanalysis doesn't have a criteria for mental health and mental illness. It does, but things are much more complex in psychoanalysis than in psychology or psychiatry. Basically, if you go to a psychiatrist, they have certain very rigid, very structured, organized criteria that they use to determine if you are adjusted, which is a very complicated word and a very debatable word. They determine your mental health using certain parameters. And that is very questionable. Of course, psychiatry is very helpful. I work with psychiatrists, with many of my patients who do need to go to the psychiatrist. But if you just go to the psychiatrist, that's what they will give you. A very narrow, shallow, very superficial look at mental health and adjustment. A psychologist works differently. They work with psychosocial factors. They have a better, more complex, richer scope. They do not work with medicine. They are not trained in medicine, so they don't do that. However, psychoanalysts work in a completely different way. Psychoanalysis, as I said before, takes some things from medicine, some things from psychology, and from many other different kinds of sciences, even physics and stuff like that. That's why psychoanalysts are very misunderstood and we feel a little bit lonely sometimes because it's hard. It's a very complex sort of thing that we delve into. But anyway, so one of the things that psychoanalysis uses to determine the functionality or the way in which we could determine if a person is mentally healthier or mentally ill is something that the psychoanalyst Wilfred Bion talked about, which is how the psychotic and the neurotic parts of the personality function and how they work together. Basically, and I am being awfully reductionist here, but what he proposes and what many psychoanalysts propose is that every human being out there, we all have neurotic and psychotic parts of the personality. It's completely normal, just as every single human being in the history of the world has both heterosexual parts of the personality, homosexual parts of the personality, and bisexual parts of the personality. We all have that. It's a matter of nuance. It's a matter of the very fine ways in which all of those things that we have potentially as potentialities, how they express themselves and how they work, how they function and how they change and all of that. That's why working with patients is so difficult, because it is a living, breathing thing. It's an entity, it's an organism of many different factors at interplay. But coming back to what I was saying, I was reading Stranger Things Happen by Kelly Link, which is a very interesting collection of short stories. And I think Kelly Link overall is a very interesting writer. This is my second collection that I've read from Kelly Link, the first one being Magic for Beginners, which I thought was superior to this one. But reading that collection and now this one has made me think that, or has made me realize that Kelly Link plays a lot with that interplay between the neurotic parts of the personality and the psychotic parts of the personality. And that got me thinking about magical realism in general. And of course, good magical realism achieves something really special, because it immerses the reader in a sort of regressive experience in which the neurotic defenses that we all have and that allow us to function in the world start to fade, start to dissolve, and they start to weaken. And when that happens, we get immersed more and more, and we go deeper and deeper into this magical realism, which is bizarre, weird, strange, wacky, and completely meaningless most of the times. And I was thinking, there are some people who don't like magical realism or fantasy, but especially with magical realism, that's a very strange thing that happens. But of course, I am understanding it a little bit better now, because in order to enjoy magical realism, you have to be able to suspend your disbelief, but not just consciously. You have to be able to psychically have the necessary regression that allows you to weaken your defenses, your neurotic parts of the personality, so that the psychotic parts of your personality can emerge and you can have more contact with them. And this is something that I think Kelly Link has achieved greatly, at least with me, with this reader talking right here. I don't think it's a coincidence that many of the stories in this collection have this sort of symbolism, or this kind of thing, recurring theme of people who are on a journey down. They are descending. The cover suggests that. It's about this, well, I don't want to spoil it, but there are many stories and many recurring themes in this collection in which people are going down, people are descending, people are going into another world. And that is mirrored in the experience of reading the book. As a reader, there are some times in which it becomes absolutely bizarre and nonsensical, and still it kind of makes sense. My idea, my hypothesis is that that sensation occurs when the reader is finally more in touch with the psychotic parts of their personality, and therefore the psychotic parts of the personality have a different kind of logical structure than the neurotic part. So I guess I am trying to come up with an explanation as to why I had a very weird experience reading this book. So I would read a story from this collection and I would really enjoy it and I would feel very immersed. But once I closed the book and took some distance away from it, I felt this weird disassociation, this weird disconnection, and I could not properly articulate what had happened in the story that I had just read 5 minutes ago, or what I understood from it, or what I got from it. And that was a weird experience. And my only explanation so far is that reading stories of good magical realism, such as these ones, really make the reader contact the psychotic parts of their personality. Um, and so once you take some distance from the book and you start functioning with your more neurotic and functional parts of the personality, you cannot access the experience again the same way that you just did. And of course, this also explains why some people just don't like magical realism, why some people absolutely adore magical realism, why some people are very resistant to magical realism, because, as I said before, you need a certain amount. Of course, this is not an amount, but you need a certain degree or a level of a necessary regression so that you can come and really be in contact with this sort of nonsensical world. So Stranger Things Happen. It's a cool collection. I enjoyed it. I could not really tell you more because I just finished it, and so I have some distance with it, and I am looking at it, and for the life of me, I know it was great. I know I had a good time. I know that it was weird and funny and very sad and very true, and it touched me, but I cannot say anymore. Stranger Things Happen, Kelly Link.